Ethan and Claire Matthews were the kind of couple people admired from a distance. Young, polished, and charming, they appeared in every neighborhood barbecue, holiday party, and Instagram feed like a perfect puzzle piece in the American dream. Ethan, tall and confident, worked as a corporate trainer for a major tech company. His job took him all over the country, from New York to San Diego, giving presentations and attending conferences. Claire, on the other hand, lived a quieter life. She was a freelance photographer, known for her serene landscape shots and minimalist portraits. She loved nature, solitude, and silence, an artist in every sense of the word. They lived in a 2-story, colonial-style home nestled in a calm, tree-lined street in Eugene, Oregon, the kind of place where neighbors waved as they passed by, and mail carriers left treats for dogs on their daily rounds. From the outside, the Matthews home looked like a scene out of a lifestyle magazine. Freshly mowed lawns, well-tended, flower beds, and seasonal wreaths on the front door. Their social media profiles told the same story: weekend hikes, dinner dates, anniversary posts, birthday surprises. They smiled in every picture. The lighting was always perfect. Their captions were sweet and affectionate. Friends commented with envy, "Couple goals," and "You two are perfect." But if you looked closer, really looked, you might have seen the cracks. Subtle hairline fractures beneath the surface of perfection. Claire had changed. She no longer posted about Ethan. Her smiles and photos became rarer. Her captions grew shorter, colder. She stopped attending neighborhood gatherings. People chalked it up to artistic temperament, maybe even burnout. But behind her eyes was a dullness that hadn't been there before. A kind of emotional erosion. Ethan either didn't notice or pretended not to. He came home from his trips with souvenirs, keychains, perfume, and always flowers. He made dinner reservations, booked couples massages, suggested spontaneous road trips. He was trying, at least, on the surface. When asked, he always said he and Claire were doing well, that life was just busy. Claire never corrected him. She smiled politely and excused herself from the conversation. She had learned to fake it well. Months ago, she had stumbled upon the first sign, an unfamiliar scent on one of Ethan's shirts. Not perfume, but the kind of body lotion Claire never used. She ignored it. Then came the late-night texts Ethan said were work-related, followed by sudden changes in his travel schedule. Hotel receipts left on the counter didn't match his stories. Claire told herself she was imagining things. That suspicion was a dangerous road to go down. But curiosity, once sparked, is a fire not easily extinguished. She began observing him closely, his mannerisms, the timing of his trips, the way he avoided eye contact when she asked questions. It was like watching a stranger wear her husband's face. When Ethan was away, Claire searched his drawers, his laptop, even his car. Nothing was concrete, until she found a prepaid phone hidden in a zippered pouch under the passenger seat. That discovery changed everything. Inside the phone were messages, pictures, videos, names she didn't recognize, photos of Ethan dining, laughing, holding hands with other women. Claire felt something in her break, not with rage, but with a cold, numbing disbelief. The perfect life she had built was a lie, and yet she didn't confront him. Not then. Something inside her decided to stay silent, not out of fear, but out of calculation. She began living two lives just like him. By day, she continued her freelance projects, met with clients, posted her photos online. By night, she planned. She started visiting gun ranges, claiming it was for a photo series about American gun culture. She researched laws, practiced alone, and kept the details hidden. She bought a gun legally, registered it in her name, and stored it in a locked case. She told no one. There was no change in her behavior, no outbursts, no accusations. If anything, she became even more distant. Detached, almost mechanical, Ethan noticed, but he didn't press. Perhaps he thought she was going through a phase. He continued his routines, flowers, trips, gifts, as if tokens of affection could overwrite betrayal, as if gestures could erase guilt. Claire accepted them all with a smile, studied his face with quiet interest, and filed every moment away like evidence in a mental courtroom. Neighbors continued to admire them. They saw Ethan returning from the airport with bouquets, waving to passers-by, calling Claire's name as he entered the house. They saw Claire watering her plants, taking her camera on early morning walks, her face calm and unreadable. No one imagined that behind closed doors, trust had already died. Even their families didn't suspect a thing. They visited during holidays, bringing casseroles and exchanging gifts, unaware that the foundation of Ethan and Claire's marriage had already crumbled. No one could see the storm brewing beneath the quiet. Time passed, and with it, the mask of normalcy hardened. Claire no longer felt sadness, just focus. She moved with precision, making sure every detail aligned, every step planned. She mapped his trips, studied his patterns, memorized his lies. She played the role of a loyal wife, all while quietly rehearsing what she would do when the time came. Ethan, oblivious, continued to live in the illusion. He told his friends Claire was just going through something. He told her he loved her often, but Claire no longer heard the words. They were just noise, like background music in a room she was no longer standing in. In the final weeks before everything changed, nothing seemed different. They still shared meals. They still watched movies together, exchanged small talk, and kissed each other goodnight. But it was all muscle memory, a performance for an audience of no one. And then came the trip, the one that would be his last. Ethan packed his bags, said it was another seminar. Claire kissed him goodbye. She waited until he left, then quietly packed a bag of her own. She didn't need much, just enough to follow him without being noticed, just enough to finish what she had started. As Ethan boarded his flight, he had no idea that someone was watching, that the woman who once loved him with all her heart now viewed him as a stranger, a liar, a threat to the life she had once cherished. And as Claire stepped onto her own plane hours later, there was no rage in her heart, no panic, just purpose. Everything was in motion now. There was no going back. Claire always believed that if something felt wrong, it probably was. But for months, she had fought that instinct. She had wanted to believe in Ethan, in their marriage, in the idea that love could weather anything. Yet with every passing day, the knot in her stomach tightened. Suspicion had settled into her bones like cold. She no longer saw Ethan as the man she married, but as someone wearing his skin. Her world, once full of color and beauty, had faded into quiet shades of gray. It had started small. A few missed calls, delayed flights, vague answers about meetings and co-workers she'd never heard of. Then came the prepaid phone she found hidden in the glove box. It was the kind of device people bought when they didn't want to be found. When Claire held it in her hand for the first time, she hesitated. A part of her still hoped it would hold nothing of importance. But once she turned it on, everything changed. The phone was full, dozens of saved messages, many of them recent. Photos of Ethan with different women, sometimes in hotel rooms, sometimes in restaurants. None of them looked like business trips. The way he held them, smiled at them, it was unmistakable. There were videos, too. Short clips of private moments that Claire should have never seen. Names she didn't know. Conversations that made her stomach churn. Some of the women appeared more than once. Others vanished after a few days of texting. It was clear Ethan had created a routine, a secret life outside their marriage. Claire sat in silence for hours, going through every message, every image. She read them all twice. Then she deleted nothing. Instead, she downloaded the files onto a hidden flash drive and placed it in a small wooden box she had kept since college. She told herself this wasn't about revenge. It was about knowing the truth. About staying in control. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay beside Ethan, who was snoring lightly, his arm draped across her. She stared at the ceiling and wondered how long this had been going on. Months. Years. She thought of the anniversaries, the vacations, the photos they had taken. All of it tainted, all of it false. Claire's reaction wasn't what one might expect. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. Something inside her simply switched off. It was like watching someone flip the power in a house. One moment there was emotion. The next, darkness. The pain she should have felt turned to something else, something colder. She didn't confront Ethan. Instead, she began to observe. She tracked his trips, matched his receipts with his stories, checked credit card statements, and synced the data. The more she found, the more calculated her steps became. She knew confronting him would lead nowhere. He would lie, apologize, maybe cry. But nothing would change. He had made his choice. Now, she would make hers. She told Ethan she was starting a new photography project. Something focused on rural America. Perhaps something about survivalism or freedom. He didn't ask many questions. He just nodded, encouraged her, and reminded her to stay safe. That's when she began her trips to the gun range. At first, it was just research. She took pictures of the range, the people, the signage. She spoke with instructors, asked technical questions, and gathered stories. She blended in easily. Her calm demeanor and artistic cover story made her harmless in their eyes. After a few visits, she started practicing. She learned quickly. Her hands were steady, her aim precise. The instructor complimented her focus, saying she had a natural eye for detail. Claire said little in response. She was there for more than photography. This wasn't a hobby. It was preparation. Once she felt confident, she applied for a concealed carry permit. Oregon law didn't require much beyond basic training and a clean record. Claire passed easily. She chose a compact handgun, something easy to handle and hide. She bought a case, cleaning tools and ammunition. Everything was legal. Everything was by the book. At home, she kept the weapon locked in her closet, buried beneath blankets in a box no one touched. She cleaned it regularly, practiced loading and unloading it in silence. She treated it not as a weapon, but as a tool, one she might one day need. Ethan remained unaware. He continued his routine, trips, lies, flowers. He returned from each journey with new souvenirs and the same tired explanations. Claire nodded, smiled, and kissed him good night. She never once let him see what was growing beneath the surface. She began preparing for the next step. She mapped out his calendar, predicted his travel patterns, and tracked every location he mentioned. She booked her own trips quietly, always, under different names. She opened a second bank account in a different town, cash withdrawals only, no digital trail. She bought a cheap second-hand car and parked it in a garage under a friend's name. Everything had to be perfect, no mistakes. Each day, her silence deepened. Friends noticed she had become quieter, more withdrawn. Her parents thought she was just focused on her work. Even Ethan commented on how peaceful she seemed lately. He thought her calm was a sign of healing, but it wasn't peace, it was clarity. Claire no longer saw herself as a victim. She didn't think of herself as a woman scorned or broken. She saw herself as someone taking back control. Ethan had rewritten the rules of their relationship without her consent. She had simply decided to stop playing his game. Now she was writing her own ending. She watched videos about missing persons, read articles about people who disappeared without a trace. She studied forensics, learned how investigators tracked suspects. She became fascinated with how small mistakes led to arrests. Claire's goal wasn't escape, though. It was precision. She didn't want chaos. She wanted control from start to finish. The flash drive remained untouched in the wooden box, hidden beneath art supplies. Her journals were vague, her internet history clean. Every move she made was deliberate. There were no emotional outbursts, no signs of instability. If anything happened, she wanted it to look like a shock, like something no one saw coming, because that was the point. To the world, she and Ethan were still perfect, still the smiling couple in matching sweaters, still the couple who kissed in airports and brought each other coffee in bed. He came home with flowers, and she smiled. Every single time. But now she was carrying something too. Not in her hands, but in her mind. A plan, a purpose, a quiet storm, waiting. Ethan's trip to Phoenix was supposed to be a simple 3-day seminar. He had gone on dozens like it before. Suitcase neatly packed, cologne spritzed, itinerary memorized. He kissed Claire on the cheek that morning, handed her a small bouquet of tulips, and told her he'd call that night. Claire smiled, thanked him, and waved from the doorway as he backed the car out of the driveway. The neighborhood saw the same scene it always did. The doting husband leaving for work, the loving wife seeing him off. But this time, Claire's suitcase was packed too, hidden in the trunk of her second car, the one no one knew about. Her steps were deliberate, her expression calm. Her movements were practiced, like a routine rehearsed 100 times in her head. Ethan's flight departed just before noon. Claire waited 6 hours before leaving, giving him enough time to check into his hotel and settle into his lies. She flew under a different name, paid in cash, and arrived in Phoenix that evening. She didn't go to the same hotel. She stayed at a small, no-frills inn across the city, cheap, quiet, and unremarkable. Her room overlooked a narrow alley, and the walls were thin enough to hear every word from the room next door. None of it bothered her. She didn't come for comfort. Claire had already tracked Ethan's location through the apps he'd forgotten to log out of. His fitness tracker pinged at a gym 2 blocks from the seminar center. His rideshare account showed pickups to restaurants and bars nowhere near his hotel. He told her it was a tight schedule, nothing but lectures and panel discussions. But by the second night, she had pictures of him with another woman, tall, red-haired, in a floral dress. They laughed over wine, touched hands across the table. Claire sat in a rental car across the street, camera in her lap, phone in her hand. The pieces of her plan had finally aligned. But watching him like that, up close, was different from reading texts or seeing old photos. It made her heart race, not out of heartbreak, but something deeper, something that sat heavy in her chest. She wasn't jealous, she wasn't sad, she was finished. She followed him for the next 2 days. She didn't need much, just confirmation, just finality. Ethan never noticed her. He was too busy pretending to be someone else, laughing like a man without a wife, walking hand in hand through parks like a carefree tourist. He had mastered the art of deceit, but he had underestimated the quiet resolve of the woman who knew him best. Claire never approached the woman. She didn't need a confrontation. The stranger was just a mirror reflecting the truth Claire had already accepted. It was Ethan who had made the choices. And now, it was Claire's turn. On the third night, Claire returned to her room, spread the items from her bag onto the bed, and checked everything again. The weapon was clean and loaded. Her gloves were packed. She had no intention of improvising. Every move had already been mapped. But then, something unexpected happened. Ethan came back to the hotel alone. Claire watched from her car across the street as he stepped out of a rideshare, holding a small paper bag. He looked tired, not happy, not excited, just worn. His usual swagger had dulled. His steps seemed slower. Something about him felt different. Claire hesitated. For the first time, doubt crept in. Was this it? Was this the moment she had been planning for? Or was this just another piece of a story that wasn't finished? She followed him inside, keeping distance, hood up, face turned. The hotel staff didn't notice her. She knew how to blend in. She rode the elevator 2 floors below his and took the stairs the rest of the way. The hallway was quiet. The soft buzz of a vending machine hummed in the background. Room 613. She stood outside, her hand hovering near her coat pocket. She imagined the scene inside. Ethan placing the paper bag on the desk, perhaps ordering room service. Maybe he was texting someone else. Maybe he was thinking of Claire. Or maybe he was thinking of no one at all. She took a step closer to the door. Then another. Her heart was steady. Her breath controlled. But something held her back. The woman from the night before wasn't there. Claire stood there for 10 minutes, then 20. She heard a television flicker on through the wall. Then footsteps. Then silence. She reached into her pocket, felt the cold steel of the weapon, and closed her hand around it, but she didn't raise it. Instead, she turned around. She went back to her room and sat in the dark. The gun lay on the bed beside her. The curtains were drawn. The only light came from a flickering street lamp outside. And she thought, not about justice, not about punishment, but about endings. She had come all this way. She had tracked every detail, prepared for every possibility. But something had shifted. In the silence of that hotel room, she realized the truth. Ethan wasn't worth it. She didn't want to be his shadow. She didn't want her life tied to the weight of his betrayal. She had been planning to take control, but real control wasn't in destruction. It was in choosing not to become what he had made her feel, small, invisible, powerless. The next morning, Claire boarded a plane and left Phoenix without saying a word. She didn't leave a note. She didn't leave a trace. She deleted the tracking apps, burned the fake IDs, and returned the car to a rural garage. When she arrived home, The flowers Ethan had left were still in the vase, their petals beginning to curl and dry. She picked them up, walked to the trash bin, and threw them away. One by one. Then she unlocked the wooden box in her closet, removed the flash drive, and slipped it into an envelope. She addressed it to Ethan's company HR department. No name, no return address. And just like that, Claire Matthews disappeared from Ethan's story. Not in tragedy, not in violence, but in silence. A silence louder than any gunshot. Ethan returned home 2 days later, suitcase in one hand, souvenir chocolates in the other. The house was quiet, untouched. The scent of old tulips lingered faintly in the air. He called Claire's name as he walked through the front door, expecting to hear her footsteps down the hallway, her soft voice answering from upstairs. But there was no response. Her car was gone, her keys missing from the hook. The kitchen was clean, and the bed had been made with military precision. Everything looked normal, yet something felt deeply off. He checked his phone. No texts, no missed calls. Just a growing silence that now stretched across hours. Claire always messaged him when he landed. Even during his longest trips, she had kept in touch. She wasn't the type to disappear without a word. Something had shifted. A strange unease crept into Ethan's chest, but he dismissed it. Maybe she was visiting a friend. Maybe she needed space. He went to bed alone that night, telling himself she'd be back by morning. But morning came, and she wasn't there. Days passed. Then a week. Still no word from Claire. No social media activity. No credit card use. No one had seen her. Ethan filed a missing person report, trying his best to appear calm. He answered every question with carefully rehearsed concern. He told the police she'd seemed a little distant lately, maybe even sad, but he'd chalked it up to stress. He didn't mention the arguments they had, or the second phone he kept hidden in his luggage. He didn't mention the redhead in Phoenix. He just said Claire had gone quiet, and now he was worried. The detectives asked routine questions. Did she take anything? Was there a history of mental health issues? Did she have enemies, debts, reasons to run away? Ethan said no. She was stable, responsible, a photographer, loved her life, loved him, but they didn't believe him, not fully. Something about Ethan's calm unnerved them. Most spouses were frantic, most cried, most flooded the department with calls and leads. Ethan, though shaken, remained composed. Too composed. 2 officers visited the house and found it spotless, almost too clean. Claire's laptop was wiped, her journals missing. One detective noted the faint imprint of a box in the back of the closet. Something had been removed, but without evidence of foul play, they had little to go on. Meanwhile, the envelope Claire had mailed anonymously arrived at Ethan's workplace. It was opened by the head of HR, who expected forms or complaints, but instead found a small flash drive with no label. Out of curiosity, she plugged it into her computer. What she saw stunned her. Dozens of text messages, videos, photos of Ethan with women, some compromising, others incriminating. Receipts, itineraries, even hotel check-ins matching company-paid trips. Ethan had used business resources to fund his secret life. And now, everything was exposed. Within hours, Ethan was suspended pending an internal investigation. A formal inquiry followed. HR forwarded the material to legal, and soon the board was involved. Ethan was asked to stay off company premises. His access to systems was revoked. Colleagues distanced themselves quickly, as if his betrayal might be contagious. News of Claire's disappearance spread on social media. A few of Claire's close friends began posting vague concerns. If anyone's seen Claire, please reach out. Her sister wrote a heartfelt post. She'd never just vanish. Something's wrong. That post went viral. Local media picked it up. A reporter knocked on Ethan's door 3 days later asking for an interview. Ethan declined. He tried to stay composed, but things were spiraling. His job was gone, his reputation in ruins. And Claire's silence had become deafening. The police began looking harder. A search warrant was issued. They combed through the house again. This time, they found inconsistencies. Voicemail records showed Claire had left him a message the day before she vanished. The message was deleted, but a backup provider stored the audio. "I know everything," she said calmly. "Don't worry, I won't make a scene." They also discovered security footage from a gas station 3 towns over showing Claire refueling a car that wasn't hers. That vehicle was later identified as a second-hand car purchased under an alias, using cash. The paperwork linked back to a shell address Claire had rented 6 months prior. She'd planned this. Detectives now believed Claire hadn't been abducted. She had disappeared intentionally. The motive? Unknown. But the preparation was undeniable. The disappearance was too clean, too precise. The timeline showed forethought. Surveillance footage placed her on flights under another name. A woman, fitting her description, was seen entering a quiet motel in Phoenix. Another camera caught her at a gun range weeks before she vanished. But here was the strange part. No crime had been committed. There was no sign Claire was harmed. No evidence of violence, no ransom, no body. Just a woman who had vanished into thin air after discovering her husband's secrets and left breadcrumbs only she could follow. This left Ethan trapped in a peculiar limbo. He wasn't a suspect, not officially, but he wasn't innocent either. Public opinion turned harsh. Online sleuths dissected every photo of their marriage. People speculated wildly. Did he kill her? Did she fake her death? Did she run because she was planning something bigger? In the absence of facts, theories flourished. His personal life fell apart. Friends stopped returning calls. His parents, once supportive, now questioned his role in her disappearance. He couldn't walk down the street without seeing his face on missing posters. Claire's face beside his, the perfect couple crumbling in print. Every night, Ethan sat in the quiet of his house, staring at the front door, listening, waiting, hoping to hear the turn of a key, a familiar voice, a reason. But nothing ever came. Claire had vanished. Left behind a ghost story built on betrayal. But perhaps the most unsettling part for Ethan was not knowing if she was dead, or if she was watching. Months passed. The seasons changed. Winter crept in, bringing with it a bitter chill that settled, not only in the air but inside Ethan's once pristine home. The tulip vase still sat on the mantel, now empty and coated in a fine layer of dust. The house was a shell, much like Ethan himself, silent, cold, and stripped of the life it once held. The investigation into Claire's disappearance had grown cold. The detectives had run down every lead, followed every sighting, analyzed every digital trace. Each clue pointed to one undeniable truth. Claire had not been taken. She had not been killed. She had simply left. But how and why remained mysteries. No one could explain how a woman could vanish so completely without leaving even a whisper of where she went. Ethan became a person of interest only in whispers and online theories. Officially, the case remained open but inactive. Unofficially, the world had made up its mind. In the court of public opinion, Ethan was guilty. Not of murder, perhaps, but of something just as damning: betrayal, selfishness, and silence. His neighbors stopped saying hello. Former colleagues crossed the street to avoid him. His world shrank to four walls and memories he couldn't escape. His once flawless reputation was destroyed. The company let him go quietly after a mutual separation agreement. He received a small severance, but the damage was permanent. Every job interview since had ended with polite smiles and vague rejections. His name, now permanently linked to scandal and suspicion, came with too much baggage. He tried moving on. He changed his number. He sold Claire's car. He even thought about selling the house. But every time he tried, something stopped him. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was hope. A twisted part of him still believed she might come back. That one day, she'd walk through the door, sit across from him, and explain everything. Then one morning, he received a letter. It wasn't stamped. No postmark, just a plain envelope left on his doorstep. The handwriting on the front was unmistakably hers, elegant, neat, precise. Ethan stood frozen for a full minute before picking it up. His fingers trembled as he slid the paper out. There were only 2 sentences written inside. I didn't disappear because I was afraid of you. I disappeared because I finally stopped being afraid of myself. There was no signature, no return address, just those words, burning themselves into his mind. He read them again, and something inside him cracked. Until that moment, Ethan had believed Claire's disappearance had been a punishment, an act of revenge, a final message from a woman scorned. But the letter told a different story, one of liberation, not retaliation. She hadn't left to hurt him. She had left to find herself. And in doing so, she had done what he never thought possible. She had become untouchable. That realization hit him harder than any accusation, any media headline, any police interview. Claire hadn't vanished because of what he did to her. She had vanished because she realized she didn't need to exist in his shadow any longer. Over the following weeks, more letters arrived. Each was short. Some were philosophical, others strangely poetic. None revealed where she was, none asked for forgiveness, and none offered any. But they all shared one theme: freedom. In one, she wrote, "You taught me to hide. Now I've learned how to be seen, even when I'm invisible." In another, "I walk through cities where no one knows my name. And for the first time, I feel real." The police couldn't trace the letters. The paper was generic. No fingerprints, no clues. They kept copies but made no progress. Each message drove the same point home. Claire had built a new life, far from the wreckage of the old one. Ethan began keeping the letters in a wooden box, the same one Claire had once used to store their wedding photos. The irony wasn't lost on him. That box, once a symbol of shared dreams, now held the words of the woman who had broken free from his. At night, he'd sit with a glass of scotch and read them one by one. They weren't apologies. They weren't love letters. They were reminders that she had seen through him, that she had survived him. The media eventually moved on. New stories replaced hers. New scandals captured attention. But for Ethan, time had stopped. Every day was a replay of the last. He tried going on walks, tried talking to strangers, tried to connect with anyone. But nothing stuck. His world was quieter now, and darker. One day, while rummaging through old boxes in the attic, he found a photo of Claire from their early days. She was standing in a field of wildflowers, laughing, sunlight catching her hair. He stared at it for a long time. She looked younger, lighter, untouched by the years of deception that followed. He placed the photo on his nightstand, next to the unopened bottle of sleeping pills he'd been prescribed months earlier. He wasn't sure what he was holding on to anymore. The last letter arrived exactly 1 year after her disappearance. It was different. It was longer. In it, she wrote, "I thought I needed to erase you to heal, but I was wrong. I just needed to remember who I was before you. You taught me what I would never accept again, and for that, I thank you. Not because you deserve it, but because I do. This is the last letter. I won't send more. Please stop looking for me. I'm not lost. You are." That was it. No return address, no farewell. Just closure. Ethan never heard from her again. He kept the letters locked away, read them less often as the years passed, but never threw them out. They were his punishment, his history, his truth. People eventually forgot the story. New neighbors moved in. The whispers faded. The mystery of Claire Matthews became one of those unsolved tales that lingered briefly before slipping into obscurity. But Ethan never forgot. Every time he looked at the empty vase, every time the wind rustled the trees outside their window, every time he passed the closet where the wooden box now lived, he was reminded that she had walked away from everything and never looked back. And that in the end was the part that haunted him most. She hadn't left because she was broken. She left because she refused to be. Here are the names of the key characters in your fictional true crime story titled, "He Came Home with Flowers, She Came Home with a Gun."